Welcome to the Blender Rookie YouTube channel. This video compilation is a compilation of almost all the Blender animations that I created this year since I started trying to learn how to use the program. The first three clips that you'll actually see are probably my three worst. I consider them to be complete failures in my opinion. Although this first one, there's a few aspects about it that's kind of neat, in my opinion. They're complete failures, and mostly because this first one's mostly a failure because I had no idea what I was doing whenever I tried to create it. I was just winging it, but it gets better towards the end because in the last three and a half months since I've started learning this, which I began actually trying to learn Blender in around October 2016. And I've gotten a lot better. I understand what I'm doing, even though it's still not great yet. Now this first one, it would have been a whole lot better if I made the particles interact with each other. The red interacts with red, green with green, blue with blue, purple with purple, and so forth. But the colors are not interacting with the emitters, or the particles are not interacting with the particles from other emitters. I had no idea that that was something I needed to set. And even though I realized there was an issue, I had no idea how to set it. And here's one that I was just messing around trying to see if I could get it to work. Still no interaction. And quite frankly, it would have looked halfway decent if there was interaction. And coming up, this clip right here is what I use as my channel trailer, I guess you could say. And it's just a very basic animation, and granted, this is right at the beginning of when I'm trying to learn how to use Blender. And I just kind of understood what I was doing when I made this. And for all accounts, I guess for somebody who was literally only doing Blender for a matter of a week or two, a few weeks maybe, this ain't, terrible. At least I got a sky texture that moves, kind of like clouds. Even though it's a noise texture. And at this point, I didn't even know what nodes were. So that tells you how bad it is. This right here is the first attempt I've ever made at fluid simulations. I had no idea what fluid simulations were, and in this case I rendered the same scene, baked and rendered the same scene 4 different times at 4 different fluid resolution settings, fluid domain resolution settings. 50, 100, 150, and then 200. And that's 150, this is 200. And mostly I was doing that for my purposes, so I can understand how the resolution setting affects it. In this one, I believe I had the resolution setting set at fairly low. I think it was 100, maybe 150. And I thought about using this as kind of a trailer, but I wasn't really happy with it because I couldn't make the text be a obstacle for the fluid. I didn't understand that I needed to turn it into a mesh. So I never really used it, although I did upload it. It's not bad. This right here was my first attempt at trying to make it look like I'm pouring water into a glass. And although it kind of worked, it kind of didn't. It just kind of looks okay. The motion is still a little bit unrealistic. But I guess it ain't too bad, although somehow or another my encoding screwed it all up. Now, I really like the colors on this, but you'll see a fatal flaw in my design. And keep in mind, I had no idea whenever I made this that I have to actually tell the particles to interact with each other. And also, I had no idea what a substep was. There's 0 substeps in this animation, which explains why the particles start going all, popcorn, jumping bean on me. But that red color right there and that blue and green, I really like that color. I can't remember how many particles I used in this. I think my brother said that the particles looked like a slushy. But all the particles are taking up the same space and going nuts. And this is just something I thought of sitting around one Sunday. I believe it was on a Sunday. My concept in my head was, like a lava lamp. It's got that real thick, viscous type fluid in it. I think it's actually wax or paraffin or something along those lines. I'm not for sure. But I kind of decided I want to try that out in Blender and just kind of have the fluid sloshing back and forth. Excuse me. And I think this would have looked a lot better if I actually had an environment texture. But at this point, whenever I made this, I didn't even know what an environment texture was. Now this is supposed to be whiskey being poured into a glass. It doesn't look half bad, but it still looks like an animation. This is my intro or exit video clip for all my videos that I upload now. And this is just a regular water fluid simulation using fluid domain. And I have this set at, it was either 500 resolution or 400, I don't remember. I think it was 500. And it don't look half bad, but the bricks leave something to be desired. But the overall reflection and quality of the simulation, not bad. And this is, I want to compare how the particle size affects the motion of the particles. I was trying to figure out how to use the fluid domain with high viscosity fluids, and it just didn't work right. In this, I want to do a variation of what I've done before, but use bullet time and glow in the dark particles. That's the bullet time effect. That's the first bullet time effect video I have ever made, and I have since figured out better ways to go about doing it. But at least I had proper particle interaction and subframes or substeps in that. That's particle fluids with force fields. And I really like the way the black and yellow work together, but me being a libertarian, black and yellow is our color scheme, so I'm probably a little bit biased. And also some of the particles are leaking through the side of the container. I didn't check the box size deflect. I didn't realize I need to check it at the time. And this animation is actually playing in reverse, but because I want it to be a mess and then turn into text. But whenever you render it or create it, you have to have a text turn into a mess. So, but yeah. Believe it or not, I have 30 particle emitters in this animation, all of them taking up the same space and then timed so they release different color particles at different times. That's how I got that effect. That took a long time to program the interactions. And this was 500,000 particles. At this point, this was the largest number of particles I had used in any animation. This is 1 million. And this is coming up on the practical limits of my system. There's two angles and two different color variations of a monkey head explosion. And yeah, nothing spectacular. Because mostly it's just me trying to learn how Blender works, learn the interface and all that. That's fluid domain mixed with using the nodes to give the fluid, a glow and change the colors and so forth. That took a long time to render with my processor. I actually like this one. I was going, the scene in Star Wars where one of the Jedis is floating. He's restrained by the Dark Lord or whatever. That's kind of the effect I was trying to emulate. I got all those blue particles coming up from the post, and those blue particles are supposed to be simulating levitation on the cube that has glow-in-the-dark fluid particles in it. And that's mixed shader particles. It's a kind of a dark green diffuse with a glossiness. And again, I'm using force fields to manipulate the particles. I kind of like that, but I wish I would have used a different color besides green. But oh well. It was mostly for education purposes for myself. And here's another comparison video I made. It's particle grid resolution comparison. I think I went up to 50 by 50 by 50. And that's a particle grid, but it's, instead of being volume, it's just the faces. Mostly just the learning, animation, something to help me learn. Because I found over time, the more you do this stuff, you'll learn the quirks, what does what, and you just gain a better understanding of, if you want this to happen, you need to do this. Now, this was my first successful camera tracking experiment. And it's very simple. I mean, the page has all the markers on it, and I'd used that page specifically because I didn't want poor markers to be the determining factor. Here's my first plane tracking experiment. And it didn't turn out too bad. It obviously doesn't look real, but it tracks pretty good, but it's not perfect. I'm actually kind of proud of this one. In my opinion, it looks pretty good. I see a few mistakes, but that's a fluid domain, and then this one's particle fluids, where the other one was a fluid domain. I kind of like the particle fluids better. And I have a tendency to make really long animations. I don't know why. I kind of wish I would have made the emitter transparent. But that part right there, I like the way that looked, how it kind of oozed through the bottom layer. And every once in a while you see a little bit of a flicker, like the lighting or something changes. I'm not for sure what's causing that, but it's annoying. But I think this one turned out pretty good. Because at this point, I'm starting to really get a hang of the particle fluids. But see it flickering right there? I don't know what's causing that. This is my attempt to make it look like, using camera tracking to make it look like a cube come out of my computer screen. It kind of worked. This is the first attempt I ever made at making any kind of hair simulation using the particle system. And it just kind of works. And of course, I put all the glow sticks in there just because I like weird lighting. This I created this about in the middle of the election season. The election was actually coming up, I believe, or had just happened. I'm not really for sure. I don't remember. But if you look at the little ghost flying around the particle system with hair, it's got Trump's face on it. And this is not me taking a political stance for or against Trump. It's just a recognizable face I put on there. And as you can see, I recycled some of my previous scenes that I created and just change colors and materials. Now this one I really like. I spent a lot of time on this one. And then that right there is one angle. Then I went to a totally different angle where I recorded each one individually and then slowed it down so it would be slow motion. And that interaction is just neat to me for some reason. And then I'd done it again from a different angle, but actually used bullet time effect. Even though there's no actual bullet time effect, it's just a manipulation of the number of frames for each timestamp, I guess you could say. And this was one of my very early camera tracking tests where I implemented particle fluids. And of course, these particle fluids are glowing, which it don't look too bad, but it looks still fake as can be. Now, I revisited soft bodies at this point because I thought, well, maybe I've learned enough to actually create something that looks halfway decent. But I made the scale so tremendously large on this that each ball is like 15 meters across, and it made them essentially collapse under their own weight. And this right here is just a long sequence of a bunch of different particle collisions where I was manipulating the particle mass of the particles in order to see how the mass affects the collisions. In this case, the mass on the yellow and red started out at 1 kilogram. And as I skip forward, the red goes up to 2, then 3, and then right now it's at 4. And the yellow staying the same. And now the red's at 5 kilograms, and the yellow's only 1. I mean, the red's just knocking it silly. And right here, I'm keeping the red at 5, but I'm starting to bring the yellow back up. Or bring the yellow up, rather, not back up. So now the yellow's like 3 kilograms. And then 4. And now both in this one, the red and the yellow's both 5. Now I got tired of the yellow always losing to the red, so I made the yellow particles in this one ridiculously high, so it would just obliterate the red. This is my first cloth simulation. It didn't turn out real bad. And this is my second cloth simulation. I like this one a lot better, although it kind of moves like rubber instead of cloth. But it took me a while to get it to tumble just right. And this is basically the same animation as before, except that I used glass as the material, and then I used image sequences, a sequence of images, as the diffuse shader. You know, kind of give it that firework projection onto it. This is my first attempt at creating a chain, and it didn't turn out half bad. And I think it's actually was my first rigid body simulation that worked. It took me a while to render this too. There's another camera tracking scene where I try to make it look like I have a hole cut in the pavement and a busted pipe. It kind of worked. It don't look too bad considering I think it's about my third, maybe fourth attempt. Now this is another camera tracking attempt. Just a wooden box with a spinning globe inside of it. And that's my driveway, by the way. You can see my little motion tracking markers on the driveway. And this is another camera tracking attempt, but I put a little get to action camera, kind of like a GoPro, sitting where that globe is. That way it could capture me in video, and then I could use those frames as a reflective, as a means of providing a reflection of me doing the video recording. That way it would look like it's something that's really there. I guess I should say. It worked out all right, but it would work so much better if I had like a 360-degree camera. And this is just another variation of the same thing. Like, I do a lot of variations of the same scene, mostly because it helps me learn the system. Because Blender is a very complicated program, especially if you have no experience. Like, I didn't have any experience when I started trying to learn Blender. And I didn't get the reflection quite right on that, but you can see me move into frame, but it just doesn't look quite right. Oh, and here comes my first attempt at using molecular scripts for the particle fluid system. It worked pretty good. It was confusing first several times I used it, but it makes a lot of sense now. I kind of like that, the way they kind of merged into each other. That reminds me of gummy worms. And those are all made with the molecular script. And here I was trying to make the cube react like wet sand, but it didn't quite do that. It looks almost like some kind of rubbery material, but kind of resembles wet sand. But I think that's mostly because I had the colors looking like sand. And this one right here is pretty much the same thing, except I try to make it react like clay. Kinda, sorta does, but not really. especially how the edges don't fall apart. They're just flying through the air, maintaining their shape. That just doesn't look quite right. And here I decided I want to cut the cube in two. Of course, it acts more like a piece of rubbery meat. But the cut effect worked pretty good, I think. And then this one, same deal, but I wanted it to look like the cube was made out of BBs, metal BBs. Kinda looks like it, but not really. And then this one is probably my favorite. I have a 4-way knife, basically like a cross, cutting the cube into 4 pieces. And then I have this slow down, super slow section in the middle. And I'm using an object info modifier in the nodes to change the color of the cube. And this is also the first time I used focal length in the camera settings, so it wouldn't just be focused on everything. So I could choose what it actually focuses on. This one right here is actually probably the one I'm most proud of altogether. It's actually somewhat of a practical VFX test. And here's what I call molecular cloth. And it's basically just using the molecular script along with the particle system to create cloth. And I'm pretty sure other people has done it before. I think Pyro Evil, the person who created the molecular script, has actually done something similar to this. I know he's used cloth, like a molecular cloth, using the particle system in his molecular script. But I've never actually seen a comparison made like this. I started off at a resolution of 25, went 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, 175, 200, 225, and 250. And I would have went higher, but 250 is the highest the particle system will allow you to make the resolution. I kind of wish it would have allowed me to go up higher, though, because it actually starting to react like cloth, although it's running too slow to be, a practical visual effects. And here's some more camera tracking scenes. This is the first version. And it kind of looks alright, but the door itself and the edge of the concrete just doesn't look right. The edge of the concrete and then the door, look, it just doesn't make sense. Now that one looks a lot better. And then this is another variation, but I added molecular script from the particle system into it. And then I got one last video. And these are pretty much all the ones I've created so far. And all the ones I created in 2016. I kind of like this one right here. And then the door opens and another cube comes up part of the way, then gets sliced in half. But anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Either way, thanks for even visiting my channel. Have a good day, people. Later.